Welcome to the Meltzone Podcast from January 5th, 2019. I'm Tom.
And I'm Stefan, and in today's podcast, we're gonna talk about the current projects we are working on.
Yeah, as every podcast. We're also talking about the news that are pretty sparse because it's early 2019, so nothing really has happened, but CES is coming up, and I'm going to MRRF. Maybe Stefan is too. And in this or that, we talk about whether we should give up on ABS or build an enclosure.
And in the topic of the week, we are talking about or discussing about what we would like to see in 2019, in terms of new hardware, new software, new firmware, and finally, we will talk about your questions that you can also send us for the next episode down in the comments or tweet them to us at the Meltzone.
Snow. Let me just add that note because snow is like the main topic.
Snow is really like the main topic. So yeah, I had been in Munich yesterday and it was kind of starting to snow at the whole day it was snowing a little bit. Yeah. And then we were driving back home and it was fine. But this morning we already had like 10 or 15 centimeters of snow lying outside. And since then it is snowing and snowing and snowing, and looking at the weather report, it's just getting worse. It stopped snowing on your side?
Oh, yeah.
On your side of the border?
It's of the Bavarian border, yeah. No, it's nice because right now it's not snowing, and it usually it's in the morning it snows and then it goes into slush and rain. So yeah, it's not been too pretty, but you know, it's nice to have some snow every now and then because it was way too warm, and it both has its up and downs. Of course, driving the snow is fun, but when you have no solar coming down from your 10 kilowatt peak solar array, it's kind of frustrating, but that's how it is.
But is your BMW Touring a all-wheel drive?
No, just a regular rear-wheel drive, which is the most fun in snow. Maybe not the most practical, but...
I don't have a handbrake anymore, and this is killing me in the snow.
You're one of those guys with the electronic handbrake.
Oh, yeah. It's really hard.
I feel sorry for you, man.
Yeah, and the electronic one doesn't really work for drifting.
Nope.
So you have the advantage still of a real wheel drive. But yeah,
yes,
no drifting for me anymore.
Too bad. Well,
but yeah,
stay safe out there. It's public roads after all.
Talking about snow and being cool outside, current projects I'm working on, or I had been working on CPU cooler mount.
Do
you? Well, we have been talking about that. I think 2 episodes ago, that I bought myself a new workstation for editing and other high demand things, and
gaming.
Yeah, so I bought this machine, and I actually even bought a new cooler with it. But just when I bought the machine, I noticed that I had a really nice big old tower cooler from my other old PC still lying around. But the problem was that I couldn't mount it because it did not support the AM4 mount of my of the new mainboard. Yeah. So I had been writing a Twitter post about that, and you have been speaking about some magical witchcraft machines that could manufacture parts for making that work. And I actually thought about that. Yeah, they do exist. Yeah, and I had been doing that. I really started working on that project. I did receive a really nice roll of like carbon fiber nylon, which I thought was very suitable for that project because carbon fiber, it's stiff. It's maybe good replacement for the steel bracket I had before. Carbon fiber, and nylon since I thought the thermal resistivity against like creep and everything was also good for the applications in my PC. And I did that, and I had some really long rendering sessions the last couple
of some load on the CPU.
With lots of load on the CPU a couple of days ago, and just at some point my screen went black and I already knew, I think I know what was happening. And the thing is, this, I actually do have it back here. I don't know if you can see.
That's a chunky part.
Yeah, it's a really chunky part. So it has to withstand some, kind of high forces due to the clamping force you need for the CPU. Well, the how you say, pressure between the cooler and the CPU, that the thermal
Anpressdruck.
Yeah. That the thermal conductivity is high, and then you also need to withstand the weight of the cooler, which is kind of heavy. This big one.
Yeah, these coolers have been getting not just that it's heavy, but it's also the main board is mounted vertically, and then you have this thing sticking out, maybe 14 centimeters or something, and it's more than that even. Yeah. And that they regularly tear off. That's the main one. They regularly tear off during shipping if you just have an unsupported cooler like that.
Yeah. So it didn't work. I was kind of upset because this was a roll of really expensive carbon fiber nylon. Well, I have also noticed that there is kind of a design flaw in there, and I fixed it in the second version. But I gave it another try actually. Again with the nano diamond PLA and annealing that, because I thought, it's also really stiff, comparable to the carbon fiber filled materials, and the thermal resistivity, or the softening point, is also kind of high if you anneal it. And I actually put it into my machine 2 or 3 days ago, and I had more rendering sessions, and since then it worked. I'm currently not recording the podcast on that machine because I don't want it to break down. But it has been working, and I hope it will be working in the future. Otherwise, I need to either get back to the stock cooler, which came with my CPU, or I need to modify some of the old brackets that I, get it back into machine.
And AM4 isn't that different from AM2, AM3, FM1, right?
Yeah, no, it's not really that different. Just the hole spacing is a little different. So
slightly off. Yeah.
My old bracket.
Why do they have to change it by 2 millimeters so that you're just incompatible?
It's good for the economy because you will buy a new CPU cooler.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yes.
Yeah. So annealing nylon is actually a thing?
Well,
sorry to keep you from sipping a tea there.
No problem. Annealing nylon is a thing, but I actually didn't anneal the nylon. I did the new mount in the nano diamond filled PLA.
Right.
So this is annealable, but I think nylon is also annealable in one way, that you kind of release the internal stresses that come from the printing process. And
shouldn't that make it stiffer if the stresses are still there?
It would make it probably a little bit stiffer, but it's more ductile in the end. I think it would not be good for this application. And I don't know if I'm wrong there, but nylon is also something like a semi-crystalline material. So it could increase the crystallinity a little, the annealing process, but I'm not sure about that. So the new one
is. If someone is a polymer expert, please leave a comment, because I'm not sure about that either. Nylons are still so new.
So annealed PLA is currently in the machine. I hope it will last. I will take it out of my computer in the next couple of days and just see if it warped. If it warped, I will replace it. If it did not warp, I will continue leaving it in my machine. It was kind of, it upset me a little bit that I thought, you have kind of expensive material, you have good printers, you can do everything. But for some applications, 3D printing or the materials we currently have might not just be perfectly suitable. Metals are sometimes just better.
maybe even an ABS would have been better. We're going to talk about that in a second, as the this or that. But yeah, have you tried ABS for this?
I have printed it out of ABS just out of curiosity, but ABS is just too soft.
Yeah.
Due to the Young's modulus is just by like a factor of 4 smaller than the carbon fiber filled nylon and the nano diamond reinforced PLA. So I don't think that it's 100% suitable for that application.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, after all, we're talking about replacing a part that is usually made out of like 1.5 millimeter stamped sheet metal.
Yes.
So the original parts are very rigid, and they do need to be under pressure to provide that clamping force onto the CPU. And, okay.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah.
So what have you been working on over your Christmas holiday?
Yeah, same as you, taxes. But I don't think taxes are that exciting to talk about. They're not very exciting to do, that's for sure. But yeah, taxes. And the interesting thing is I've been working on getting my DIY printers kind of revived. The Service Reborn, the Big Delta, that's been kind of sitting idle because the main board's been going in and out of that. That has a smoothie board, and I've just got it running again. And also the Mendel 9000, which I've been like working on for a while. It's been my main printer for a while, and then like others came along and just kind of sat there. So I've rebuilt that. It has linear rails and it has modular design, and I mean it's been a long time coming.
Is the Mendel 9000 the Mendel that you made out of OSB boards, or is that your Mendel 90?
Not OSB. So my very first own printer was okay. It was a Prusa too, but out of that I built the Mendel 90 out of MDF, out of the same parts, because the Mendel 90, the knob head design, I think it's still a great design because it's like so modular and versatile. You literally get a config that you can put in. Okay, I want to use this sort of rail. I want to make it this big. I want to use these belts, and it literally generates a cutting sheet and STL files that fit those exact specs you put in. So the MDF Mendel 90 was my second printer, and off of that I was like, okay, I can build this like massively. So I built it out of, I think, 18 millimeter plywood. Basically a 400 by 200 by 200 build envelope, and that's been my workhorse for a long time. And yeah, very very elegant design. But I've reprinted most of the parts, so now that I can use it for testing hot ends boards, different belts, different everything.
Cool.
And it kind of came to a halt in the wiring process, because wiring is just such a dull task, I guess, and very non-enjoyable. It does have full drag chains and total overkill for wiring a Kraken in there. But yeah, I dropped the Do-It in there that I've had for a while. And I'm just at the point now where I update the firmware on the Do-It and flash the configure it and set all of that up. And that's been fun, actually getting stuff done, just being able to okay, I'm going to install this, and this is the process, and it's just good. It's nice being able to do it that way, where you're seeing progress.
Maybe a stupid question, but what kind of firmware are you running on the Do-It board? Is it Marlin 2.0 or is some proprietary firmware?
I'm actually not quite sure if Marlin 2.0 is running or is supporting the CPU that's running on the Do-It. The Do-It uses the same CPU as the Arduino Do-It, which is where the name comes from. And it's the RepRap firmware, basically. It's the guys at Do-It 3D, right? And Adrian Bauer and all the core team, they are providing that RepRap firmware. It's a 32-bit firmware that does a bit of web serving and some servering and a few nice advanced mechanical things, but it's all open source, right? It's not like locking you into anything. And yeah, it really hinges around the fact that you have a web interface. The main do-it boards are either the Wi-Fi or the Ethernet. So you plug that into your network, and you do basically everything through a web browser. Be it updating firmwares, controlling the printer, uploading print files, all that, and that's really nice. And also, it has a ton of processing power. So it does stuff like deltas or hang printers or, all the other crazy geometries really effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Mendel 9000 doesn't have one board that it's going to be using. It's wired up specifically to be very easy to take every component out, including the main board. So I'll be testing, the new, what's it called? Not the Replicate, the new all-in-one board from Elias Bakken. I'm going to be testing 32-bit boards. I'm going to be testing Marlin 2.0 in there once it's done and running.
That's pretty cool if you have such a modular system for checking out all of these different things, especially also something which, I have thought about is the belts you mentioned before. So you can now get the really high quality belts from E3D, and I would really like to know if there's a difference in print quality or
there is.
There is.
there is so much. Just by the fact that the knockoff or cheapo belts just use less glass fiber.
Okay.
It's just, you put more glass fiber into the belt, it gets more rigid, it gets stiffer, so you get less ringing. It very much makes a difference.
Okay, so I should really get myself some of these new belts and try them out. I actually bought some other kind of mid-range belts, I think already a year ago, and I thought about, testing them in my tensile test machine just to see if there is a measurable difference in stiffness, and then to see if there is also a difference in print quality, but I never got to that. But a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago actually, when they have shown that they are now selling these high quality belts, I thought, this could be a really interesting topic I did not really hear that much about, at least on YouTube, which is my main source of information.
It's kind of an overlooked topic because it seems, it's not a very exciting topic like belts. Come on, it's, here's one, this one looks exactly the same. Like, why would I pay 10 times as much for this?
But it would be a really easy, optimization of your printer, because you don't have to disassemble your whole printer and just swap out the belts. All the Chinese printer, they mostly use zip ties for getting them into place. So in a couple of minutes, you have one really great update. So I think this is something really interesting.
I think that there's been I've seen one or two videos about this where it's really cheap print, and it really improves the quality of what you're getting in your print. But it's not a very obvious upgrade, I think. The more obvious one would be, hey, I'm going to put in the 32-bit board, which we're also going to talk about hopefully later on. But it's all these details that kind of separate the boys from the men, or the girls from the women. It's all the stuff that people don't really see. You buy an i3 printer and it's like, okay, this one is $800 and this one's $200. Like, it's the same thing, right? But I don't want to harp on that. Yeah. Belts. How did we get to belts?
Because you have talked about belts in your modular printer, and just that topic came up in my head, and this is something which I really wanted to talk about for quite a while, or which I wanted to work on for quite a while. But so
I'm just hoping it's I'll get around to actually testing stuff on it. It is built to be very easily swappable. So because it's plywood, everything is just mounted to straight plywood planks, literally. Like the mount for the X-axis belt is 4 screws here, 4 screws here. So idler on this side, idler on that side, and then a single screw that couples like the loop closing clamp onto my X carriage. It is built extremely simply. And I'm hoping that that's going to help me more easily test things on that.
You briefly talked about taxes before, and this is really not an interesting topic, but it kind of affected at least my work for the last like 2 or 3 months, because it has been consuming that much time, because I had to do taxes for the last 2 years. And well, the problem is also myself, because I didn't always print out the receipts when I bought something, or the invoices.
Oh, you're not alone on that.
So I kind of was like for days writing messages to all of the sellers where I purchased stuff, and this has cost me weekends and weekends. And well, since I'm working full time, the weekends are usually reserved for making videos. So this was kind of the reason why I didn't make that much content during the last 2 months, because horrible topic, and if I'm just thinking about it, it makes me a headache.
That's the thing, right? It's not just it's taking up your time, but it's also just pushing you down so much because it's such brain dead work. There's no like creative fulfillment in there, or no challenge. It is literally just grind work that you do.
Yeah.
And you're not alone in that. I mean, I've been slacking off on doing that, you know, the accounting and bookkeeping and that sort of stuff over the last months too, because I've always had better stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
You know, stuff that actually profits people.
Productive. Well, for my first year, it was at least worth the time, because I got money back, because I invested way much more money that I made in my first year of YouTube. But for like 2018, I have to do that work, and I have to pay additional taxes when I'm finished with it.
Yeah, the outcome, the result isn't even worth it.
Oh no, and that really sucks. I need an accountant.
Yeah. Well, it's how it is. I mean, we all, you know, we pay our taxes. Not how do you say it? I enjoy paying taxes because I know at some points it goes to the right places, and we're in the good position that we can afford to pay taxes, and you know it's all good.
Good health care.
It's just getting there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, health. Don't get the Americans mad. Should we move on? We were talking about not getting much stuff done.
Yes.
It was the holiday season, Christmas season, New Year's, which is, you know, in Germany especially, is kind of the time where nothing really happens. From the 24th of December to the 6th of January, it's like the time zwischen den Jahren, between the years, and most people are off work.
Yeah.
Most normal people are off work during that time and just hang back and relax with the family. And, you know, news-wise, of course, that means that, you know, there are no real news that come out. And, you know, people are off work. Nobody pays attention to news. So nobody's really releasing anything or announcing anything, unless it's stuff that politicians don't want people to notice. No real news. So news section is pretty short. I do have 2 things in the notes here. So first of all, CES is coming up.
Yeah.
I think it's happening like this weekend or next week. It's like these days. When the podcast is coming out, it's probably happening right then. And Joel is going there, 3D printing there.
Oh, cool. Well, it's not too far for him.
Well, it's
like
to Vegas.
To Vegas.
I mean, it's like a 2 or 3 hour flight. But the thing is, during CES, like Vegas is crazy. Vegas is crazy anyways. But I mean, he was posting on Twitter about like a hotel room is $1,500 a night.
What? usually, well, I have been at the West Coast like 5 or 6 years ago, and Vegas was always the place where you could stay really cheap in a really nice hotel room. But yeah, if there are exhibitions there, it's same in Munich, same in Frankfurt, when the big.
True.
Yeah. CES is actually from the 8th of January to the 11th, so that's Monday, probably. Oh, is it? It's Tuesday till Friday.
Tuesday to Friday next week.
Probably this week.
Yeah, when you're listening, it's this week. So that's CES. I never know what CES is kind of about, because it's everything and nothing, kind of like that. There's so much happening and so so much noise going on. Actually, I think that the biggest announcement I'm hoping for CES is not 3D printing, it's camera related. I'm hoping Panasonic finally announces not their full frame S1 and S1R cameras, but that sweet, juicy 10 to 25 millimeter f1.7.
You've been already saving your money for that?
I want that thing so bad because it's like, it's the lens that literally does everything.
Yeah.
It can replace almost every lens that I have on my cameras at any time. So I want that. I want 2 of those. I'm just going to get rid of every other piece of glass I have and just...
What was the focal range?
10 to 25.
10 to 25.
So because Micro Four Thirds has 2 times crop, so that's a 20 to 50 millimeter equivalent at f1.7.
Okay. Yeah, I'm currently looking at my camera and it's, well, I have the 12 to 35 f2.8 on there.
Constant, yeah.
Yeah. But it's going to be a big one.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a big chunky piece of glass for sure. But yeah, if it does everything, I'm kind of scared of how much that thing is going to cost. Because the best Micro Four Thirds lenses are already like 1,500 euros. And having the same, hopefully, optical quality and f1.7 over a zoom lens, I mean, well, I'm hoping they announce that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really follow that much of, well, CES news. I don't know if there is much 3D printing there. Well, lots of televisions and probably mobile phones will be shown there, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, Joel is going to report back from CES, I'm sure. So yeah,
he's pretty busy. He's traveling around all the time.
Yeah, he's just been to the UK, right?
Yeah. Oh, I was really envy of him being there because
it was also like, hey, why didn't they invite me? I'm closer, you know.
It's all about subscribers.
True. I guess that they're going for the biggest fish there. So yeah, he was at Siemens, where they announced like a new metal printing facility, something.
Yeah,
in the UK, and they flew him over from the US to the UK for like a day, which is by itself just kind of crazy.
Well, if you are interested in professional metal and plastic 3D printing, why not visit EOS one time in Kreiling? It's just like 1.5 hours from you.
I've talked to them before, but I've not gotten around to them, and
we should go there. I've been there several times already, and they have a really interesting showroom there.
Yeah, well, showroom, but are they open to also showing the stuff that you don't usually see in the marketing brochures?
They have interesting stuff there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, factory tours always are tough to do, first of all, because it can take a ton of effort to not just shoot, but then also to edit. But they're also they vary a lot in what result you get. I mean, you might get a guy that is like super boring to listen to, and it's just like the marketing guy that recites all the stuff that everybody knows already. Or you might get someone that, you know, knows to tell their story well, and you never know what you're going to get before you do it. Yeah. So yeah, CES and EOS. Maybe EOS. That sounds good. But also MRRF. You're not going to MRRF, are you?
I'm still thinking about it. I don't know if I can free my schedule.
Yeah, it's a weekend.
Yeah, it's a weekend. I don't. Well, I have read that you'll be going. How long will you be staying in the US?
So I'll be there just for MRRF, for all of MRRF. So last year I think I came in late Friday, so around midnight, checked into the hotel and was there Friday and Saturday, and then left on Monday. And this year I'm actually flying in a bit early on Friday, so that I actually do get to join that first evening of MRRF, and then I fly back out on Monday.
Cool.
And I do have a hotel room with was it not double beds or you'd have a bed if you want that. If you're up for sharing rooms.
I'm really thinking about it, and if it's just a weekend, I can totally do that with my work. And I haven't been to the US for like 2 years, and I'm really looking forward to go back there because I always enjoy being there all the nice guys, all the good food. The only problem is that it's March, and it's, I think, well, not the nicest time to be there, but there are probably going to be lots of interesting people around.
Last year was quite chilly, yeah, but it's an indoor event, so
yeah,
whatever.
But one of the things which is so great about the US is the countryside, the vastness.
Oh yeah, the Midwest is the exact right place to go for that. There's literally nothing there.
Seeing cornfields for the next like couple of 1,000 miles.
Yeah, I mean I guess the most. The thing I was surprised about the most is because, I mean, not Elkhart, but the Goshen, the area there, that is like deep Amish country. And I mean, you know the Amish, very religious people, very, how do I put this? But the one thing you see is those small, like 1 or 2 seater horse carriages parked around, and riding around. Like it's people use that as like a form of transport. It's I kind of like the idea, but it's just you're not used to that.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of really tells you, okay, you're not in your usual big town right now. You're in a special place.
Yeah. Well, I really need to check my schedule and maybe book the flights better earlier than later.
I'm gonna forward you the flight that I booked. It was like 730 euros or something for both ways. Okay. Via Sweden, so it's not a direct flight.
Is it with Lufthansa or?
It's air something, Swedish Airlines. Do they have an airline? But
probably.
Last year I flew with Polish Airlines via Warsaw, and that was, I mean, you fly the wrong way for 2 hours. And via Sweden, it's not that bad. It's still like a 13-hour trip. But it would have either been staying an extra day or flying in a day earlier with Lufthansa with direct connection, which does add on, it's a full extra day that you're spending there. Or paying like 1,500 euros for a direct flight on the day that I actually want to go. So, yeah.
Where are you actually flying to? What's the next big city there?
So, there's not a lot.
Well, is it in Illinois or in which state?
Yeah, it's Illinois, and it's Chicago that you're basically flying into. So Chicago, O'Hare. Detroit is actually Detroit and Indianapolis. Wait, no, it's not Illinois. It's Indiana, right. So the airport everyone flies into is Chicago O'Hare. Okay. And that makes the most sense. I looked into flights from Detroit and from Indianapolis, and there's just nothing. Not a lot happening there. So Chicago is the place you fly into.
When I was next to Detroit like 10 years ago, I think Delta is flying from Stuttgart over Atlanta to Detroit, and that's more or less the cheapest flight you can get there, but it's still kind of expensive. And it's quite a ride going from Detroit all through Michigan to Indiana.
Well, it's if you look at the map, like it's that triangle of, let me mirror this for the camera. Here's Chicago, here's Detroit, and here's Indianapolis, and it's like in the dead center is where you want to go. So it's still a 3-hour car ride from Chicago to Goshen.
You are totally right.
Yeah. Rental car.
Yeah.
Got that booked. Not a big deal. It's just, you put on cruise control, and it's nice roads for the most part.
That's not an issue. Well, this part of the country would be really nice if it would be like May or June.
Yeah, it can get really chilly and cold and windy and rainy. The one like half day I got to spend in Chicago last year was wet and cold and uncomfortable, and I looked out onto the Great Lake and it was like fog. Nice. Okay, seeing that, let's move on. Let's get to the airport.
Yeah. So I'll check my schedule, and maybe I can make it as well. I should actually go there. It would be like a really interesting experience.
I've been putting it off for way too long. Like the years before the 2017, 16, people were always like, hey, you gotta go. And it's 2018, I finally went, and it was amazing. It's like, it's the core spirit of what 3D printing is and what the community is all about. So if you get the chance, definitely go for it.
Well,
if you need a sponsor, sure, we can arrange something. By the way, if somebody's listening who would want to sponsor my trip there, hit me up. Sponsors at toms3d.org.
Yeah.
And if you want to sponsor Stefan.
Yeah. Hi.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of a shy guy, so I usually wouldn't go there.
Me too.
Yeah, I wouldn't go there.
Don't worry about it. Everyone's like that there. Everyone's uncomfortable.
A couple of nerds.
For sure.
So
you'll definitely enjoy that.
Perfect.
Cool. Uncomfortable topics. Let's move on to something that we're more comfortable with. This or that. Today's
topic is build an enclosure or give up on ABS. So I don't know. PLA is usually the material most of us are, best. They have the best knowledge and the best experience with. ABS was like the first material of 3D printing, but it has become something many don't really do anymore. Due to several issues, hot end, heat bed, enclosure, warping, cracking of parts, and all of that. So
I think it's a pretty clear cut, at least in my case, where my printing rooms are relatively cool. If you're not printing in a conditioned space where it's like 25 degrees all the time, Celsius, you really need an enclosure to print ABS or ABS polycarbonate or just straight up polycarbonate, which is, very similar material to ABS. I think it is really that clear cut. Either you build an enclosure, you put your printer in it, or you just don't print ABS, because getting ABS to work on a non-enclosed machine is just such a pain. Like, you might get a print that looks good, but it's not going to have good layer adhesion for the most part. Or it's going to peel off the bed, or it's going to do some other weird stuff. But as soon as you put your printer in an enclosure and it gets to, like, say 30, 35, 40, maybe at max degrees in there, just air temperature, it's all good. Like, ABS is such a non-issue to print in an enclosure.
And you'll get really nice looking prints. So like the flow of the melt of ABS is great.
It's so creepy.
Yeah, it's so creepy. You've been talking about that with in one of the first podcasts where you were at E3D. That also, with ABS, you have the opportunity to print like really small parts because it flows so well through the nozzle. And this is kind of nice.
Well, some types of ABS. The MG94 is like the classic that works with the 0.15 millimeter nozzles because it can actually flow through orifices that are that small.
So how are you?
So yeah,
actually usually handling ABS? Do you have lots of enclosed printers?
I do have that one box that I put a Prusa into every now and then. The Prusa lives in there. I just remove the front cover door or whatever. And right now, Mark III's in there. The Mark II used to be in there. It's just, it's literally just a plywood box, former shipping crate. I stuffed like a foam padding thing into the front so that it's where I lean an OSB. OBS is a different thing. I lean an OSB board on the front, and it's just, it's not even airtight, right? You don't want to cook your printer. It's a box. I have two nice recessed lights in the top so I can see in there. It's just a box, and Prusa have been like showing people how to build something out of IKEA luck tables. Really inexpensive and easy to do, and you don't need much of an enclosure, but it helps so much.
I actually had been using, like, for a whole year only an old really big cardboard box, and I just put the printer on the floor in my basement, started the print, and then just put the big cardboard box above it. It worked great. The only issue I always had is like that it's not really that fireproof. But it's more or less the most easy solution you can do.
As long as you're not putting an 8 in there, it should be fine. Yeah. So, well, I guess we're both on that track of, hey, ABS is kind of useful, and we'd rather have an enclosure.
It's still a hassle to print with compared to PLA. I gotta be totally honest there.
I don't think so. Well, personal experience here.
Well, starting from the smell,
it's set up. It's like
because
True.
So if you have a separate room for your printers, even printing ABS is not that bad because you just have the smell in that room, and if you're just there for a couple of minutes, it smells, but
it's not the healthiest.
It's not the healthiest thing. But if
True.
you are in an injection molding company, the people work in that.
Oh yeah, I'm always surprised about how little ventilation there actually is with injection molding, and you smell the stuff really bad there.
But you have some really cool benefits if you're working with ABS, and this is not only like the higher temperature stability of the material, it's also that it's kind of impact resistant, it is really ductile, you can vapor smooth it.
Oh yeah.
This is apart from the Dremel printer, which I'm currently working on. And this just showed me again, working with ABS and smoothing your prints can be something so nice because you get a glossy finish in the end and it just works.
Yeah. That for sure. I mean, people keep asking me about, hey, how can I vapor smooth PLA? And I'm always like, dude, you don't want to have that stuff that does that in your house.
Actually, chloroform can do that. Or
I believe so, yeah.
It's hard.
No, I'm not sure you want to work with that again. And I'm also not quite sure where you'd actually buy chloroform these days.
I
feel like in the 50s it was quite well available, but
I think you can't get it as a normal citizen in Germany.
Yeah, or at least you end up on some watch list. But do we actually need ABS? Do we have alternatives? Do we have PTG that does almost the same stuff?
PTG gets into the direction, but you don't have the benefit of being able to vapor smooth it. It can be brittle. It is not as temperature resistant as ABS. So there are some downsides. There is still a place for ABS, or actually, in my opinion, ASA would even be the better candidate, but it's just not that common.
It's not that easily available, and it's also, because it's not that available, it's just more expensive as well. I mean, I find myself when it's any part that could get hot, like for the MPCNC, I don't have the parts up here anymore, but I printed a motor mount for a brushless 400 watt spindle. And I was like, okay, the rest of the MPCNC is actually printed from PLA. That's the recommendation, which is interesting.
It's stiff.
And it doesn't get hot. At least if it gets hot, there's something seriously wrong with your bearings. But the motor mount, I was like, okay, do I print this out of PTG? I don't know. Let's just use ABS just to be sure, just to be safe. But it's that thing again where it probably doesn't need to be ABS. PTG would probably have been fine as well. But the thing is, we need some temperature resistant material. We can't just say, okay, PLA all the things. That's would just limit our applications so much. So I guess that's...
Would nylon be an alternative for you in comparison to ABS?
Nylon, I've always found nylon is a bit too soft for many things, at least when it's not carbon fiber filled. And it's also a bit tougher to print because just getting it to stick on a bit, that can be quite the challenge. And overhangs also quite often don't print as nicely with the nylons I've tested.
And the moisture problem. But we'll talk about that in a bit.
That's assuming that you've already have a well-dried nylon.
So do you think there's still room for ABS, or do you think that PTG would be like a good alternative for it?
I mean, I've been a fan of PTG for a while. I think for I feel like I've talked about this before. We should start keeping like an Excel spreadsheet of topics we've covered on the podcast. I feel like PTG can do 98% of the applications that ABS might be used for. In fact, Prusa just switched to PTG for their printers from formerly printing everything in ABS. So, I mean, if it's good enough for that, there's not much left where you actually need ABS. Where a PTG probably wouldn't be able to cope. Now, the one thing that I still like about ABS versus PTG is it doesn't anneal or heat treat. It doesn't crystallize after the fact. And I've had that happen on specifically a phone mount on my bike, where it was fine for the most part. And then we put it on the bike rack in the back of the car, and we had it sit in the sun. And the phone mount, which was just like a C-clamp where the phone snaps into, it slightly shrunk. And it got brittle, or at least it got stiffer and, I don't know, less ductile. I guess that's a better way to put it. And the first time I plopped my phone into it, it was just too tight. It snapped, and that was it. So I think that might be a more subtle issue with PTG and high temperature applications, where it might be fine for a while, but it's going to change its properties over time.
Okay.
At least some PTGs. I think in that case it was E3D Edge.
Okay.
Yeah, and ABS, I think by the nature of the copolymer makeup, ABS just doesn't do that. It just doesn't crystallize.
Well, I didn't know that PTG also, a bit anneals. You can get pure PET filament, which you can anneal, and then it's really, really temperature resistant. But I always thought the glycol would more or less...
Well, again, it was E3D Edge. I'm not exactly sure what the precise chemical makeup of that is.
You could be right there, or you are probably right there.
But okay. They're saying it's PTG based.
Well,
right. So, do we have a conclusion?
As always, it depends. Yeah, for most of the part, it's probably fine, but there are some applications.
Yeah, it's like the conclusion of pretty much everything. Like, yeah, it this or that. It depends.
There isn't a best printer out there. There isn't a best printing profile out there. Yeah,
who would have thought? Yeah, the best or yes no is always hard. But I guess as a general advice, like use PTG. I guess.
Yeah, it's
fine for so many things. Cool.
So
it's 2019, by the way, which feels weird.
It feels really weird. I'm still looking forward to starting my normal work again, and always messing up the date on documents, and always have to make like a 9 out of an 8, which is kind of hard. Making a 8 out of a 7 worked, but now it's getting hard again. I think I have to get some Tipex or something like that.
Yeah, so topic of the week. What would we like to see for 2019 in the 3D printing and making space?
Tom, please start. It's a really hard question for me.
Yeah, it's predicting the future is in general kind of hard. Wishing for things to improve, I think, is more doable. So let's try that. 2019. I mean, what were the big things that happened in 2018 that kind of improved the landscape? It was the year of, we briefly talked about this before the podcast. We sometimes prepare for this stuff. It was the year of the industry, kind of, right? It was cheap printers getting good enough. It was also kind of the year of the Prusa Mark III that came out in December of 2017. So all throughout 2018, that was still very, very relevant. So I would really wish for those two, extremes kind of combining. As probably everyone does. that would be a good thing for everyone, right? More intelligent design, and I think Reality have done a good job of designing their machines kind of intelligently without overusing or just throwing more material at it and throwing more resources at it. I think that they've done a good job of building stuff smart. But also what we're definitely going to be seeing in 2019 is more of the stuff that, for example, Ultimaker or Prusa have introduced. Prusa with the flex plates. The flex plate is still so good. I'm actually going to be getting a third-party flex plate that I'm going to be able to put on the CR10. I'm hoping that's going to be more prevalent, more widespread.
Which one will you be
It's
getting?
just the Wham Bam. Yeah. Oh, you have one? Cool.
Yes, I have one, but I didn't manage to put it on my CR10 yet. This.
Oh, you also get the CR10 size?
Yeah.
Cool.
So who is first? Nah.
Yeah, but I just got a shipping notification from FedEx or DHL Express or someone. Yeah. That I hope becomes more widespread and more of an option, more machines. Simple stuff like filament runout sensors. Just the printers becoming less of that dumb and blindly what's the word I'm looking for? These blind machines that just do what you tell them and they don't really understand what they're doing. I'm hoping we're going to see, more of that sensor array that some printers are bringing. I mean, be it NFC spools or auto bed leveling or those things in general.
Maybe even using smart stepper motor drivers like the Trinamic ones to notice if you have a stall or something like that. This is also something which could be implemented kind of easily. Yeah. I mean, Trinamic drivers add cost. Yeah.
It kind of goes against that. Okay, we want the cheapest possible machine to build out that's still usable. Trinamic drivers for sure. There's so much unused potential in them, especially now that the newer generation after the 2130. I think those were still first or second generation of their motion core, and now we have the newer generations that do more, that have better detection of stalling and smarter current management and all the things you actually want that nobody else has been doing before.
There's something like
so if you get that
600-page manual for, I think, the stepper motor drivers for the TMCs,
which is crazy if we compare it against an Allegro or the what's that weird drive I've seen in the monoprice, some 4-digit basically Allegro equivalent, which is like a 16-page data sheet, and that's it. So yeah, the stepper drivers definitely know so much about what the machine is doing, and it could also lead to being able to use more affordable materials elsewhere, where you don't need to overbuild certain parts. Like belts are already kind of at the limit of what they can do, but maybe we can go towards the direction of the printer compensating for some of the flaws that the mechanics inherently have. And RepRap Firmware on the Do It and Marlin are kind of both working on that, where they try to compensate for how filament flows through a hot end, by kind of counteracting the latencies and all the stuff that thing is doing. Maybe we can see the same thing for mechanics.
Linear advance
taking out ringing.
Ringing.
Yeah, it's basically just a control loop that has minimal information about what the machine is currently doing, but gets some information about that helps it predict what the machine should be doing and being able to counteract that. But taking care of ringing.
But this is something where, and we're going to talk probably about that topic in the questions, 32-bit controllers, because you need more computational power in order to make it smarter. And I think with, taking a look at the smart features on the Prusa, we are kind of at the edge where not that much more is possible at the moment. If I'm taking a look at the Gerbil firmware, which I use for my CNCs, they don't have like backlash compensation because they have issues with the memory and the computational power to manage everything. And if you just have more of that, you can use smart algorithms for like compensating a ringing and all of the things like that.
Yeah, there is still a lot possible on the 8-bit boards and 8-bit controllers that we have. We're seeing some efforts in Marlin where, for example, they're starting to implement S-curve acceleration, which is like the smoothest sort of how you can accelerate a printer. Guys and girls listening here, if you just have your linear acceleration where it's like I go from 0, I have a smooth or a straight up speed ramp to a certain set speed. Yes, your acceleration is constant, but your jerk is not. And your pop, crackle, and snap are not either. And those are the things where it's like you change the acceleration abruptly. That's going to give you ringing. And S-curve acceleration, for example, which doesn't need any sort of feedback loop. S-curve just makes sure that basically the derivative of the acceleration of the jerk is always that S-curve. So you have the maximum smoothness in your motion. And that by nature kind of takes out the possibility to excite an axis, which is basically what ringing is, right? You excite it at a certain frequency and then it wobbles for a bit until it settles down, and S-curve just kind of takes care of that. Marlin is working on getting that implemented on the 8-bit boards by optimizing the hell out of it.
But I guess this is the problem. It requires a lot of skill and techniques to get it implemented.
Yes.
If you would just have like the brute force approach, I don't care about computational power because I just have it. It would be much easier to implement things like that. So this is maybe something which might be becoming more common and more prominent in this year. 32-bit controllers, and then these smart features.
I sure hope so. Because the thing is, as an open source community, we only have so many resources to throw at things, and it always depends on what you allot those resources to. Of course, the community doesn't have like a vote. Okay, I want this, and 1,200 votes for this and 1,600 for that. No, but if developers have to spend their time on over optimizing a specific set of code instead of just downloading something from somebody else or copy pasting code into their overpowered 32-bit firmware, then one of them is obviously easier. And 32-bit isn't even more expensive than 8-bit. It just people just need to start using it, and firmwares need to start supporting it better. That's, I guess, a bit of an issue.
Yeah. So in my regard, so you've been talking lots about hardware and firmware. I think software is also something which is just will become more easy and more approachable this year. I'm always kind of I kind of start laughing when everybody's always asking for the perfect profile for their printers, and is this better than that one, and do you already have the magical profile of this guy or that guy? With the latest versions of Slick 3R, don't hate me for that, Cura.
Why would anyone hate on you for that?
You won't hate me for that.
It's the correct way of saying it. There's a 3 in there.
The thing is that the stock profiles already work really, really well. And I have seen that again with the Dremel printer. The profile they delivered with their printer didn't work as good as the stock profile you have in the current Marlin version. So I don't want to see people tinkering for days and days to find the perfect settings. At least that I would like to work out of the box so they can spend more time on engineering on their projects, CAD and things like these.
If I'm understanding you correctly here, that is something that you want the printer manufacturer to do. That is in their responsibility to provide a better, complete experience for the user. Where it's not just, hey, here's a machine, use it, have fun, and that's it. You get like a 3-page manual on how to assemble the 4 screws that hold the XY assembly to the bed, and like good luck with the rest, right?
This is one thing, but also like the algorithms in the software and just the stock settings, they are that good that they, besides like changing the acceleration and speed value, changing the retraction value and the speeds in the software, there is not much more to do for the user.
Yeah, and in Slick 3R PE Pro Show Edition, and I think that the main one as well, I've not really tuned in the profile.
Me neither. We've been talking about that last time.
It's like, Yeah, you open up, you create you use the default profile. You say, okay, the size that you drop in the nozzle, and maybe if it's a Bowden or not, you change the retraction, and that's it. You're gonna get great prints out of that. And for sure, slices have maybe it even ties into what I was talking before with like compensating. Excuse me, for the hardware. Maybe slices can take some of that responsibility as well and give you features.
Well, there's coasting and nozzle wipe in.
Yeah, exactly. Those things.
But this is also something which you have to tune in the end. But just making it possible and maybe giving some really good defaults for the generic Bowden printer and the generic direct-driven printer is a really good start. And as I said, I think we have come to the point where not that much tinkering in terms of slicing settings isn't necessary anymore. Just because it works quite well out of the box. As I said, the Dremel printer, they have their own version of Cura, and the print results with that version, with their settings, aren't as good as if I just used Cura 3.6 and used the standard profile.
Yeah. I guess one more thing that I do want to that I would like to see for 2019 is, people working together instead of against each other. And to kind of make clear what I mean here is there's so much work or so many people are starting to use like these proprietary, like I've seen the Lurge board recently in the Monoprice machine, these proprietary setups with a firmware that is like almost fully featured, that has a touchscreen interface that does all these things, but it's completely closed source. It is, you pour in the some developer pours in the resources into that, and it might do 90% of the things people want, but it might even do some things better than some other solutions. But the problem is, once that developer goes away or the next big thing comes around, like they have to start from scratch. If there's not something published, if there's no open source release of the work they've done, so it's not just that people get softer slices. I mean, the stuff we're talking about is already all open source, and it's great because it has been people or communities sharing their knowledge and putting their input into it. That's why this software is so good. And I would like to see that being valued more over just, hey, buying into the next closed source thing that, as soon as it goes away. As we're kind of seeing with Simplify 3D now, people have bought into the software and now they're not happy anymore. But what you're going to do, like, you've paid for the software. That's it. Like, it's closed source. All the smart stuff they're doing, as soon as, if they go out of business, that's it. That's gone. You go back to Slick3R and Cura, or you use the simple. Well, maybe you don't use the Simplify 3D version anymore because the activation servers go offline. Good luck with that. So yeah, I do want to make that point for, please, people, if you're spending resources, whether that's buying new hardware, buying to software, make a conscious decision whether you want to support an open project. Even financially, like, that's not out of the question. Like Marlin firmware and, well, Cura is now funded by Ultimaker, but the open source projects that you're using, maybe just shoot them $5 or something instead of buying a closed source product that might, with all its knowledge, may go away at some point. And there is stuff like Bounty Source out there where it can specifically say, hey, please, for this project, I would like this thing implemented, and I'm gonna attach $5 or $10 to that wish. And it accumulates up to, whatever. And as soon as somebody solves that problem or fixes that, they get that bounty. So, which is actually a really nice model. And I would like to see that used more. And just putting it out there, that is an option to make the open source developers do what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking about people out there, we have some questions.
Yeah, I feel like there was one more thing for 2019, but maybe it comes to me.
We can edit that back in later. Nobody will notice.
Oh no, we never edit our podcast.
We actually don't.
This is all uncut.
We actually really don't. It's really easy for editing. I don't know if we should, but it's just like finding the beginning, finding the end, and that's basically it.
YouTube wants watch time.
Okay.
That's the message. And that is exactly why there is no video on how to dry PTG on my channel yet. Thank you for that question, TS3D Prince.
Yes, but I have already replied this morning that I actually did something regarding that topic and finding out what the difference in material properties is if you dry out your PTG, if you don't dry it out, if you get it really dry.
Yes.
And just, staying on that topic, and I just noticed that again and again and again, it just is sometimes required to dry out your filament, because otherwise you won't get happy. You will get jams, you will get horrible print results, you will get stringing and all of that. So everyone who is not just printing plain old PLA should think about that topic. If you have ever problems with your prints, think about if moisture could be an issue. And this can also be the case, and this has been happening to me many times. If the filament is directly out of the bag with the silica gel inside, this doesn't mean that your filament is dry.
Because doing manufacturing, there is no drying step. It's spooled and then it's sealed. And that's it. If
you are buying your filament from one of these big manufacturers, there is an option that you can get your filaments pre-dried, but this adds more cost to the material. So usually this amount of money is not spent, especially since the vacuum bags that you're using, they are not like 100% closed for air and moisture molecules. So even though it's vacuum sealed, it will accumulate some moisture over time.
I guess those aluminum coated ones that I think Matterhackers uses for their Nylon X, which is like the silver thicker ones. Those have the aluminum coating just to be absolutely sure that nothing gets in and out, right? But just the shrink wrap, basically the simpler stuff, that is not moisture tight. Now, filament manufacturing explicitly has the filament in contact with moisture, with liquid water, in fact. And you have your raw resin, it gets extruded, and it immediately runs through a water bath to cool down. Then it gets wound into a spool, either onto a into the final size or into a bigger master spool, and that then gets rewound. But at no point is there a drying step usually involved. The small pack of silica gel is not going to do anything during transport. So definitely, and PLA is moisture sensitive, but not as much. Like a wet PLA is still going to print well, right?
But I have noticed with the modified PLAs that moisture can become an issue again. So I have some PLA pluses or tough PLAs around here, which didn't print really that nice out of the box. I dried them and they were perfectly fine. So just get yourself a dehumidifier and put your precious filaments in there, and when you get them out of the dehumidifier, put them in a box with lots of silica gel, and you will be all set.
The box is never going to be perfectly airtight, just due to ambient pressure changes. It's always going to breathe slightly, so you will need to dry that silica gel every now and then as well.
But the kilo of silica gel I have in my box that lasts me for a year. Well, I don't open the box every day, but if you open it just 1-2 times a week, it's totally fine, and the moisture in there is below 10%. Perfectly fine for filament storage.
Yeah, and they do have that changing colorant in there. So usually they're orange when they're dry, and then they turn green once they've kind of saturated with moisture. We're almost at that point. So you even know when to dry them. So it's a really simple solution.
And there are some small electric
I've seen those.
Small packages with silica gel in there, and when it is saturated, you can take it out, just like put it on a charging station, and it dries out itself again, and then you can put it back into the box. And supposedly these also work kind of well.
Well, I thought you were going to talk about something else there.
Well, you can also put a full-size dehumidifier in your box.
No. What I thought you were getting at is I've seen these small, like no moving part dehumidified discs, basically. Somewhere on YouTube, was it Big C Live, BigClive.com?
Yeah.
Well, however you pronounce them. So basically, like they're pretty expensive. So it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to use them for this. But it's like small passive, well, not passive, but no moving parts inserts. You drill a hole into your box, and it like slowly moves your water molecules out without actually draining air. So those would be perfect for something like this, where you don't have a ton of moisture that gets added into your enclosure, but it just needs to maintain that low humidity level. So yeah, but they're like $50-$60 for a small disc that does a few micrograms of moisture per but it doesn't dehumidify a lot.
Well, silica gel is also kind of expensive.
Yeah. For $10 you can get like a big sack of this stuff, and you dry it every now and then. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
All right, next question.
Yeah, or use what is it?
No, it doesn't work.
Litter.
Been there, done that. Doesn't work.
Okay.
Well, maybe
it's been recommended too often.
I should have dried it at first, but I got it out of the bag, put it into my dry box, didn't change anything.
Aren't there like two different types of that as well?
These were some really nice, like translucent crystals, horribly expensive. For the really pretty cats, it didn't work for me. Maybe somebody else has better experience with that, but I tried it out, didn't work for me.
Silica works for sure, which we can both confirm.
Next question, which we have already been talking about. Yanis Rokans has been asking about upgrading his heavily modified CR10S with a new control board. And
yes, so he's already done a bunch of stuff. Mechanical mods, created his own master spool, E3DV6, and now the next thing will be like, hey, should I get a new control board? So, his points of attack here are basically, okay, I want some better stepper drivers. And what firmware am I going to use with 32-bit? So, first of all, does he need 32-bit for CR10?
Well, he doesn't need it.
No.
But the question is it still worth buying a 32-bit control board, which maybe has dynamic drivers on it?
I mean, the one option for that would be to do it, right? Or they do it Maestro. How much is that
110 pounds, I've just checked.
How much is the pound worth right now?
Hey, Google.
Not a lot, right?
Don't you have an Alexa or something around you?
I don't, but my phone's always listening. So
125 euros, so that's like $140.
So pricey for a CR10. Probably the most expensive upgrade he's done so far. He would have done so far, right? And I mean, you don't really need 32-bit for a Cartesian printer unless, those features come along for, S-curve acceleration and smart compensation and web interfaces. So you do get a lot, and you do get a lot of potential right now.
But he was also talking about web interfaces, and the Do It board, for example, would already include a web interface. It has Wi-Fi included. Absolutely. So it would be a nice option for that. It has the dynamic drivers on there, so you can get quieter and higher microstepping, which is also a benefit, even though you maybe do not see better results in the end, because the microstepping we already use on our printers is already kind of sufficient. But noise, yeah, bad microstepping, not trinamic microstepping, is something definitely different.
Yeah. So the Duet 2 Maestro, the budget version, TMC 2224 drivers. So I think that's the serial or one of those newer generation, I believe, than the 2130 even. And you get Ethernet. You don't get Wi-Fi with the Duet 2 Maestro, which is still fine, right? It's still networked, and if you want Wi-Fi, you can just get a bridge. Those are what, $20, whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a nice upgrade to go for a 32-bit board, and especially for a Duet. But if it's just for the stepper drivers,
better buy just a normal RAMs and put better stepper motor drivers on there.
Yeah, well, don't buy the RAMs either. But it's kind of.
Didn't you actually make a video about upgrading a RAMs with trinamic drivers or something like that?
I've done videos on the trinamic drivers themselves, and I think I just happened to use a RAMs for that. But it's the same for any other board that is compatible with the standard pull-low format of drivers, which is a standard driver board. 32-bit is a tough one, but the one thing that's been confusing us is maybe invest in a 16-bit board. Yanis is also asking. I've looked up before, like, is there a 16-bit microcontroller? And there are a few PIC microcontrollers, and the MSP, the MSP 430 is also 16-bit, but it's not. Those are not processors that are being used in 3D printing at all. I don't think there's a single firmware that runs those. So 16-bit is not necessarily a middle ground, and I think that there might be a bit of a misunderstanding of what that even means.
So I guess the step from 8-bit is going to the 32-bit. I don't know if there are 64-bit controllers out there, and I don't think there's the necessity at the moment for that. So if you want to upgrade your board and you want to get more bits, get 32 bits.
Yeah, and the bits, I mean, the bits themselves don't really help you with anything. It's just that, an 8-bit board kind of implies that you're running a 16 megahertz Atmel processor. That's kind of what the 8-bit board is. And 32-bit is just naturally, because it's a more modern architecture, you're getting more modern processors with higher clock speeds and higher instructions per clock and all those things, plus more functionality and more RAM and all that. Well, 8-bit does have a limit on how much RAM it can address. But like the bits themselves, again, they don't really give you anything. It's all the other things that come with the fact that it's a newer platform. Do we have an answer for this now? Should Yanis go with a 32-bit board? Is there? Do you have a recommendation for a good 8-bit board?
No, I don't, because I'm not really good at that. So I think the Duet would be a good thing, but you have to invest like 140 to 160 euros for that. You'll get the quieter stepper motor drivers, and you'll probably good for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I'm confident that Duet is gonna is proliferate the right word here. Duet is a good platform to be at, for sure. And it's a board that can move with you as you're switching printers, as you may or may not do in the future. All right, let's answer one more.
Yes.
Because this is a
last
quick
question of the day. Lef149 asks, if I made something and it was infringing on a patent, if I don't sell it, will I be infringing on the patent? First things first, we are not lawyers. But Tom, I guess you had at least an opinion on that?
Yeah, again, so this is not legal advice, and don't hold us accountable for this. But here's the and also, like, this is we have so many different patent laws over the world. This isn't just one thing that applies to everyone. But generally, I mean, first of all, if nobody sees that you're using the patent for your own purposes and you don't like advertise or sell or make money off of that, like nobody's gonna care really. If you just use it for your own fun, whatever, nobody's gonna sue you for that. And the other thing is most patent regulations have like explicit passages in there where paragraphs. That's the word. Where it's you can use the tech and the processes and the everything in a patent that is described in there for private purposes and for research specifically. As long as it's not in the product that you're selling, it's like explicitly fine in many jurisdictions. So to answer that question for Life 149, yes, you are absolutely in the green with using a patented technology or process or whatever, as long as you're not selling it, basically.
I don't know if you also have an opinion on that. I was already thinking about, am I infringing on a patent if I show like how I can make myself patented technology in a YouTube video? Because I'm more or less making money from that video. Or do I infringe a patent if I show somebody else how to infringe a patent?
My intuition would be no, for the following reason. A patent is not just a document that tells you, hey, I as the patent holder can use this tech exclusively over the next 20 years. A patent originally was also intended as a means of sharing knowledge. I mean, the idea was, hey, you have this thing where you document the entire process, your entire technology of what you're doing. And then once your patent runs out, once you get those fair years of exclusivity and the monopoly on that tech, everyone else can use it because it's documented in that patent on how to do it. So basically, I think by showing people how to infringe a patent, you're doing nothing more than reciting the already public patent itself. Mm-hmm. So I don't see the problem with that. But again, ask a lawyer if you're really unsure about that.
Yeah, and I think that's it for today.
Fantastic. Well, it was good talking to you again in this first episode of 2019.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for your time out there. Thanks for watching and listening. And we'll see you, you'll hear us in the next one.
Yeah, 2019 is still so weird to say. All right. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.